Hello and welcome to this short video on vitamin D. Now, in recent years, the interest in vitamin D has increased, but this has come into even sharper focus during the COVID-19 pandemic. We know that vitamin D helps to support the immune system, and it mainly does this by boosting the health of your T cells and your macrophages. These are just some of the important cells which help you to fight infection. Previous research has highlighted a link between low vitamin D levels and higher rates of other respiratory conditions such as asthma. But a recent study by the University of Chicago also showed that people who are vitamin D deficient are nearly 60% more likely to test positive for coronavirus. This new study is the first to show higher rates of COVID-19 in people who are recently vitamin D deficient. Further details into these findings will be covered in a later talk, because today I'll be focusing on an overview of an article published by William Grant and Michael Holick. This research looked at the benefits and requirements of vitamin D for optimal health. So I'm just going to cover some key aspects and findings from their research. Generally, it was found that vitamin D has an overall important protective effect for several serious conditions. These include several bone diseases such as rickets, muscle weakness, certain types of cancer, for example prostate cancer, multiple sclerosis and type 1 diabetes. As well as having a preventative effect on all these conditions, Grant and Holick also concluded that vitamin D levels should be maintained during all stages of someone's life. For those people who are not producing sufficient vitamin D from exposure to solar UV rays, UVB, oral vitamin D is required. Separately, the study also looked at several groups of individuals where low vitamin D causes specific issues. One of the primary roles of vitamin D is the regulation of calcium and phosphorus absorption and their metabolism, which is essential for good bone health. This role is really important during pregnancy and lactation, simply because bones develop very quickly during this period. Unfortunately, the authors discuss that low birth rate appears to be a consequence of a vitamin D deficiency during pregnancy. On the other hand, a sufficient vitamin D level during pregnancy reduces the risk of the baby developing some serious medical conditions such as type 1 diabetes, multiple sclerosis and other neuro. The study then went on to look at the effects of vitamin D during youth. And the primary role of vitamin D during this time is the optimization of bone mineral density, and there have been multiple studies which have shown correlation between low bone mineral density and vitamin D insufficiency. It's also found that vitamin D plays a role in reducing the risk of multiple sclerosis. Multiple studies from various countries have shown that higher altitude subsequently increases the risk of developing MS due to the exposure of UVB at varying times of the year. Not only does vitamin D prevent the risk of developing MS, but it has also been shown to be beneficial for treating the symptoms. Also, some evidence does show that increasing the UVB radiation and vitamin D during youth reduces the risk of some cancers, for example, prostate cancer and non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. So, just moving on to adults and the benefits of vitamin D. The authors review some of the key conditions which increase the risk of developing low bone mineral density, osteoporosis and osteopenia. These included insufficient levels of vitamin D, along with inadequate calcium intake and also the lack of exercise. It is now thought that solar UVB rays and vitamin D may reduce the risk of up to 17 types of cancer. In addition, Grant and Holick also found that a variety of medicines may also contribute to low bone mineral density. These medicines included anticonvulsants, heparin, warfarin and methotrexate. There was good evidence to support the idea that maintenance of adequate vitamin D levels, calcium supplements and exercise activities could combat both the primary and secondary risk factors for low bone mineral density during adulthood. Now, I suppose it's within this population group that we associate most of the issues with vitamin D. The elderly are likely to spend less time outside in the sunlight, and therefore it's even more important for them to maintain their vitamin D levels. What's more, not only are the elderly more likely to spend less time out in the sun, but their ability to then be able to produce vitamin D during exposure to sunlight is also reduced. Therefore, it's no surprise that unfortunately osteoporosis and the subsequent risks of falls and fractures is strongly linked to the lack of vitamin D within this population. So I'm just going to quickly touch on the final aspects of Grant and Holick's research, which is that the article also covers some of the recommendations on vitamin D supplementation and the guidelines for solar radiation. Further information on these two areas will be covered in more depth in the future presentations. So as promised, here is the link to the full article if you're keen to give their research a thorough read. But I just want to spend the last few minutes of today's presentation discussing a brand new service that we're offering, which may be of interest to you in the context of vitamin D. So an important question, I suppose, is what can you actually do to support an adequate intake of vitamin D? So a main question is, who are we? Now, we are a healthcare company who has a successful track record in the supply of medical devices, but actually in this instance, we've gone on to develop the first home vitamin D testing kit. Now, this test kit is cost effective and provides a solution for patients to be able to fully understand their current vitamin D status. Within just 20 minutes, you'll receive your own individual test result, so the set is very quick and easy to use. From here, you're provided a personalised vitamin D supplementation programme to try and ensure that your levels are kept at an absolute optimum throughout the course of the year. Now don't worry, we are also able to provide some coaching to support you in maintaining your vitamin D levels long term. If you would like any further information to do with vitamin D, the service that we offer to help you maintain a sufficient level and all the varying packages, then please simply go to the website, of which the link is currently on the screen. Although we have only recently started promoting the Test at Home kit and that this is a new product, we've already made some interesting findings. Now, some customers were still vitamin D deficient despite already taking some supplements. On the other hand, we found that some customers were taking excessive levels of supplements, more so than what they truly needed. Interestingly, there were patients who were originally diagnosed as vitamin D deficient by their GP and prescribed some supplements for this. Later, they were asked to buy their own, which they did, but were subsequently taking too little a dose, and now they're actually deficient again. To put it simply, you need to know what your current levels are before blindly taking supplements, which may be too high or too low a dose, in order to obtain and maintain a sufficient vitamin D level. I hope you found today's presentation worthwhile and that hopefully you've learned something new. I just want to thank you for taking the time today to watch and listen to the presentation. Please keep an eye out for any of our future talks covering vitamin D and other products.